You buried it. Not dramatically, not with ceremony or declaration or the kind of conscious closure that people talk about in therapy. You just quietly, gradually, the way you do most things that cost you, you placed it somewhere interior where you didn't have to look at it every day, filed it under finished, underdone, under that chapter of your life that belongs to the past now and stays there. And you got good at the filing, good enough that there were whole days where it didn't surface, where you moved through your morning and your work and your conversations and the ordinary texture of your life without that particular weight making itself known. And you took those days as evidence, told yourself, see, it's over. You're through it. The fact that you can go a whole day without thinking about it means it's done. And then something small would happen. A song in a store, a smell that belonged to a specific memory, someone laughing in a particular way from across a room. And before you could stop it, before the filing system could intervene, something would surface. Brief, vivid, gone, before you fully caught it. And you push it back down and keep moving. Let me describe who this person was to you. Not the story of what happened, that's yours and it's specific, and I'm not going to presume to know every detail, but the quality of what they were, the particular space they occupied. They weren't casual. That's the first thing I keep getting when I sit with this energy. Whatever the relationship was, however it was defined or undefined, however long it lasted, however it ended, what existed between you and this person was not ordinary. Not in the way that people sometimes elevate past connections through nostalgia. Genuinely not ordinary. There was something specific about being in their presence that didn't replicate elsewhere. And I want to try to describe that something without being sentimental about it. Because it's not about them being perfect. They weren't. And you know that. And the knowing is part of why the ending made sense even when it hurt. It's about a particular kind of resonance. The specific experience of being with someone where something in you that is usually slightly braced, slightly monitoring, slightly managing, goes quiet. You were more yourself around them than you were around most people. Not because they required less of you, sometimes they required more, but because the requirement felt aligned. Like being asked to use the version of yourself you actually are rather than the version you've learned to perform for different contexts. And that experience, that particular ease of being fully yourself, that's not something you've found everywhere since. The ending, I want to stay with this for a moment because I think how it ended matters for understanding what's happening now. It didn't close cleanly. That's what I keep getting. Whatever the circumstances, and they vary for different people watching this, there wasn't a conversation that said everything that needed to be said. There wasn't a moment where both of you arrived at the same understanding of what happened and why and what it meant. There was just an ending, maybe abrupt, maybe gradual, and then suddenly complete. Maybe one of you pulled back and the other eventually stopped reaching. Maybe life intervened in the way life sometimes does, and the connection got lost in the logistics of it. Maybe something was said that neither of you knew how to come back from. But the specific conversation, the one that would have actually addressed what was real between you, the one that would have given both of you something to stand on afterward, that conversation never happened. And you've been carrying the weight of that incompleteness, not obsessively, not in a way that has prevented your life from continuing, but in the specific way that unfinished things sit in us, occupying a small amount of permanent background processing, never fully resolved, because resolution requires an ending that both people actually understand and what you got was something more ambiguous than that. That ambiguity is about to be addressed. Hold on. Because there's something about this person's current situation that I keep getting pulled toward, and I want to describe it carefully. They've been in a period of reckoning, not the dramatic kind, the quiet, private, middle of the night kind that doesn't announce itself to anyone and leaves no visible evidence in the daylight hours. The kind that happens when life slows down enough through circumstance or choice or some combination that the things a person has been outrunning finally catch up. And one of the things that caught up with them is you, not as a fantasy, not as a romanticized, past perfected version of what you were, as a real thing, a specific, concrete, honestly examined thing, who you were, what existed between you, what they did or didn't do that contributed to how it ended, what they lost when it ended, and sitting with that, really sitting with it, without the usual mechanisms of distraction and forward motion and the construction of narratives that distribute responsibility comfortably, that sitting with it has produced something, a clarity, the specific uncomfortable clarity that comes from looking at something honestly without the protection of the stories you usually use. There's an image I can't move past. Someone holding a phone. Not in the casual way we hold phones, constantly, genuinely holding it, sitting with it in their hand with a specific intention. And they've opened a conversation, yours, the thread that probably still exists in their messages, even if it's buried deep, even if they had to scroll for a moment to find it and they've started typing something and deleted it and started again and put the phone face down and picked it up again. This has been happening for longer than you know, not every day, but with a regularity that speaks to something that won't resolve on its own. Something that keeps returning them to that screen, to that conversation thread, to the beginning of a message they haven't yet found the right words for. Because the right words for this particular thing are genuinely difficult to find. How do you begin? How do you reach back across whatever distance has accumulated of time, of silence, of everything that went unsaid, and find a sentence that doesn't sound like too much or too little? That doesn't over-explain or under-explain. That communicates what needs to be communicated without making them seem unhinged for reaching out at all. They've been trying to solve that problem. And recently, and this is what I keep coming back to, recently something shifted in the equation. Some internal threshold was crossed. Some point was reached where the difficulty of finding the right words became less significant than the cost of continuing to not send anything at all. Wait, because there's something specific about what tipped that balance, and I want to try to name it. Something reminded them of you recently. Not a vague nostalgia, something concrete, specific. The kind of reminder that lands in the body before the mind has time to manage it. That produces a physical response, something in the chest, something that takes the breath slightly before the protective mechanisms kick in. And in the moment of that reminder, something became clear that hadn't been clear before. Or something that had been quietly clear for a long time finally became impossible to continue ignoring. I keep getting the sense of someone who encountered something, a situation, a person, an experience that held up a mirror. That showed them in sharp and unflattering relief the difference between what they have now and what they had with you, between the quality of connection available to them in their current life and the specific quality of what existed with you. And that comparison, that involuntary, honest, could not be managed away comparison, is what finally moved the needle. not sentimentality, not fantasy. A clear-eyed recognition of something real that they let go of and have not found the equivalent of since. The more I sit with this, the more I keep finding something I want to say about the form this contact is going to take. It won't be dramatic. I want to establish that clearly, because I think sometimes when we imagine someone we thought was gone reaching back out, we imagine it with a certain cinematic quality, the perfect message, the declaration, the unambiguous statement of exactly what they feel and what they want. That's not what this is. What I keep getting is something more tentative than that, more human, more like the first careful step of someone who isn't sure of their reception and knows it, who is reaching out not with certainty, but with the specific courage of someone who has decided that uncertainty is no longer a sufficient reason not to try. It might be something small on the surface, a checking in, a reference to something you shared, something that could be read as casual if you wanted to read it that way, but that carries underneath the surface a weight that isn't casual at all. And you're going to feel that weight because you're Virgo, because your perception is precise enough to feel the difference between a casual message and a weighted one, even when the words themselves don't announce the difference. You're going to know what this is. I want to talk about what happens in you when it arrives, because this is actually the most important part of this reading. Not their reaching, you are receiving. The first moment, the moment your eyes land on the name, the moment the notification appears, the moment you realize who this is, that first moment is going to contain more emotional information than you'll be able to process in real time. There will be something that resembles shock. Even if some part of you, the intuitive part, the part that has been running quietly underneath your conscious awareness, even if that part somehow knew this was coming, the conscious mind will still be caught off guard. And underneath the shock, several things simultaneously. Something that has been filed as finished will suddenly feel unfinished again, not painfully. More like the way a room looks different when you open the blinds, the same room, but suddenly more visible, more present, more real than it seemed in the darker version. There will be something that resembles relief. The specific relief of a question you didn't know you were still holding getting answered. Because part of what you filed away with the relationship was the not knowing, the inability to fully understand what happened. And a message from them, whatever it says, is already, by its mere existence, an answer to something. They didn't disappear into permanent silence. They came back, and there will be something more complicated underneath all of that. Caution. The specific, earned, completely reasonable caution of someone who knows what it cost the last time, who knows how much of themselves they invested, who knows the specific texture of that particular vulnerability, of being open to this person, of letting this person matter, and who has not forgotten how it felt when that openness became the thing that got hurt. That caution is not your enemy. I want to say that clearly. That caution is intelligence. It's the accumulated learning of someone who pays attention. It's Virgo at its most functional, taking past information and applying it to present circumstances. But caution applied uniformly, without distinguishing between what was true before and what is true now. That caution can become a wall that keeps out things that are genuinely different. This situation is genuinely different, not because they magically became someone else, not because the things that created difficulty before have all been resolved, but because time passed, and in that time, something happened to them, the reckoning I described earlier, the sitting with, the honest examination that has produced a version of this person who is approaching you differently than they did before. Not perfectly, not without remaining complexity, differently. And the difference matters. There's something about how you've changed since this person was last in your life that I want to name, because you're not the same either. And that asymmetry, both of you having moved, both of you arriving at this reconnection as changed versions of yourselves, that actually creates something interesting. You're not picking up where you left off. That's impossible now. Too much time has passed. Too much interior work has been done on both sides. The people who existed in that original connection were real, but they were earlier versions, less tested, less certain of themselves in certain ways, less aware of specific things that subsequent experience has made visible. This is a new beginning wearing the costume of a return. And I want you to hold that distinction carefully, because the temptation when someone from your past reaches back is to either fully resurrect the past version of the connection, to slip back into the familiar dynamic as though no time has passed, or to carry all the old hurt forward into the new moment as though nothing has changed. Neither of those serves you. What serves you is meeting this as what it actually is. Something that has history between you and therefore has less groundwork required, but something that is genuinely new in terms of who both of you are bringing to it. A beginning with context. I want to say something about timing, because I keep getting pulled toward this, and I think it matters. This isn't random. The timing of this contact, the specific window in which this person is reaching back into your life, this is not arbitrary. Something in the configuration of circumstances, internal and external, has aligned in a way that makes this the moment. For them, the reckoning has reached its conclusion. The clarity has arrived. The cost of continued silence has exceeded the risk of reaching out. For you, something has stabilized. The building you've been doing of your own life, your own identity, your own sense of what you want and what you deserve has reached a stage of completion that makes you receivable in a way you might not have been at an earlier point, where you can encounter this from your own ground rather than from a place of need or wound or unresolved longing. Both of you are ready in ways you weren't before. That simultaneous readiness is not coincidence. It's the kind of thing that happens when two people have been on parallel journeys, and those journeys finally bring them to the same place at the same time. The last thing, when the message appears or the call arrives or whatever form this contact takes, I want you to resist the immediate instinct to decide what it means before you've let it land. Because you're going to want to know immediately what this is, what they want, whether this is safe, whether you should engage or protect yourself by staying distant, whether this is the beginning of something or just a moment that closes again quickly. You want the analysis before the experience. That's Virgo. That's the way your mind protects you, by getting ahead of things, by having a position established before the thing fully arrives, so you're never caught without a framework. But some things deserve to be felt before they're analyzed. This is one of them. Let the name on the screen land. Let the message sit for a moment before you read it. Let yourself feel the fact of this before you decide what to do with it. You've been through enough to handle whatever this is. You're grounded enough to stay in yourself even in a moment of genuine surprise. And you've become someone who doesn't need to have everything figured out immediately, who has learned through everything you've been through that some things reveal their meaning over time rather than in an instant. Let this reveal itself. Be present for it. That's enough. That's everything, actually. If something in this touched something you've been quietly holding, if a moment landed somewhere true, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Tell me what resonated, even just a few words. It means more than you know.